Hey, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a group of ancient Greek thinkers who basically asked a super dangerous question: what if truth just doesn't matter? Yeah, we're talking about the Sophists, and these guys, they weren't just philosophers in the traditional sense. You could almost think of them as intellectual guns for hire. They kicked off this epic battle between objective fact and the sheer power of persuasion, a fight that, believe it or not, is still raging today.
So, really let this sink in, because this question is the absolute key to understanding the whole softist revolution. For them, philosophy wasn't about this grand search for some universal right answer. In fact, they kind of argued there might not even be one to find. Instead, what they were selling was something way more practical: a toolkit for winning, period.
Okay, so to really get just how much of a bombshell the Sophists were, we have to take a quick look at the world they crashed into. See, before them, you had these thinkers we now call the pre-Socratics, and they were on a very, very specific mission.
And I mean, the ambition here was just staggering. These early philosophers, they truly believed that morals weren't just something humans made up. No, they thought right and wrong were literally woven into the fabric of the universe itself, kind of like a cosmic law of physics. Their goal was pretty straightforward. If you could just figure out how reality works, you could discover the one true way for everyone to live.
And then, the Sophists showed up. They took a long, hard look at this grand, noble search for a single cosmic truth and basically said, nope, this is a complete and total dead end.
You know, their reaction was just so radical. They weren't just picking a different team, they were flipping the whole game board over. They developed this really deep skepticism about whether we as humans could ever truly know what reality is. So, what on earth led them to just abandon this quest for truth that had been going on for centuries? Well, it boils down to three main reasons. Their reasoning was just ruthlessly practical. First, incompatibility. They looked around and saw generations of brilliant minds all coming up with wildly different, totally contradictory answers. Second, incommensurability. This is a big one. It wasn't just that the theories disagreed, it was like they were playing completely different sports with different rulebooks. There was no way to even judge one against the other. And finally, equivalence. For every killer argument for an idea, they found an equally compelling argument against it. It was a perfect stalemate. So what do? They didn't just give up, they changed the entire objective of the game. All right, so think about it. If the search for absolute truth is a total lost cause, what's left, right? How do you operate in society? How do you win in court or become a leader in politics? Well, the Sophists offered a powerful new tool. They said, stop searching for what's true and start mastering the art of making things seem true. And this right here, this is the crucial pivot. They shifted the entire goalpost from philosophy to rhetoric. The game was no longer about discovering what is objectively true in some abstract sense. Instead, it was all about convincing other people of your truth. And doesn't that sound familiar? In order to get real, tangible results, to win the argument, to get ahead in life. So what exactly is rhetoric from their point of view? Well, it's the art of persuasion for sure, but it's a very specific kind. It often works by totally bypassing pure logic and appealing directly to our emotions, to our fears, our hopes, our desires. It's a tool for getting things done. One of the most famous sophists, a guy named Gorgias, was just in awe of this power. He saw speech as more than just communication. To him, it was a force of nature, something capable of achieving these incredible, almost godlike things. And just look at the kind of power he claimed it had. He said rhetoric could heal grief and create joy, but it could also be a weapon. He actually compared it to abduction by force, like the listener is a helpless victim. And even more chilling, he called it drugs on the soul, a kind of poison that could just numb our ability to think clearly. In his world, speech wasn't just powerful, it was dangerously powerful. Okay, so you can probably see where this is going. This huge shift from truth to persuasion, well, it had some absolutely explosive consequences for morality. I mean, if there's no objective truth, what happens to the idea of objective good and evil? This famous line from another sophist, Protagoras, really became the banner for this whole new way of thinking. It's a statement of radical, pure relativism. So let's really unpack that for a second. If man is the measure, it means truth isn't something we just find out there in the world. It's something we create.
This is basically the ancient ancestor of the modern idea of my truth. What's true is simply whatever seems true to me, or to you, or to my tribe. And this is the terrifying endpoint of that logic, coming from yet another sophist named Thrasymachus. If there's no objective standard for what justice is, then what is it? Well, it's simply whatever the people in power say it is. Might literally makes right. Justice just becomes a tool that the strong use to control the weak. Wow. Now, as you can imagine, not everyone in Athens was exactly thrilled with this idea. The Sophists' radical relativism was a direct attack on the very foundations of their society, and pretty soon a powerful counter-movement started to form. Even before the main counterattack, you had thinkers like Antiphon who were already pushing back. He drew this really crucial distinction. He said, sure, the laws of our city, those are just social agreements. They're artificial, they're relative. But he argued there's a higher law, a natural law. These edicts of nature, he called them, are universal and absolute. You can't vote them away, and if you violate them, you are harming your own soul, whether anyone is watching you or not. But the ultimate challenge, the greatest challenger to the Sophists, came from a man who would become their #1 intellectual rival, Socrates. He actually agreed with them on one point. Finding the truth was incredibly difficult, but he passionately, absolutely rejected their conclusion that it was impossible, or that the search wasn't even worth the struggle. Socrates' weapon of choice wasn't rhetoric, it was a brand new kind of intense conversation. He called himself an intellectual midwife. He wasn't going to just give you the answers. Instead, through this process of relentless questioning, he would help you give birth to your own ideas, so that you could then look at them, examine them, find their flaws, and, hopefully, get a little closer to what's real. His goal wasn't success in the world, it was the care and improvement of your soul. And this really brings us right back to the central battle, doesn't it? For Socrates, there was a world of difference between genuine persuasion, the kind that comes from good, clear, logical thinking, and the emotional manipulation of rhetoric that the Sophists were all about. One enlightens you, the other, well, it just drugs you. So we end up right back where we started, but now the question is so much sharper. The Sophists, they came in and tore down that old certainty that truth was just out there waiting for us to find it, but what they replaced it with was a world where power is the only thing that really matters. Socrates, he rejected both of those options. He believed we had to forge a completely new path. But that leaves us, with the ultimate philosophical challenge. If truth isn't simple, and it isn't just a matter of might makes right, then how in the world do we find it? That very question would go on to define the entire future of Western thought.